when people are different, some of those differences are very, very difficult to bridge. There are three major areas that keep coming up in relationship work I do all the time. Some people are very clear about what they want and get it and demand it, and others are very good at compromising, frequently to their own cost. And this means you get the person who's demanding and the person who's more relaxed finishes up feeling like everything's controlled in some way by their partner. And if they ever wanted to make a change to that, it would be pushing water uphill. So what they do is they don't bother. And they suck it up. And of course, you know where that leads. But another variation of that is perfectionism. Generally speaking, we all have ways of doing things that we prefer. And we don't see, until we get into a relationship, or until we get challenged, that actually some of our patterns, other people would consider are over the top. They're perfectionist patterns. The difficulty here is perfectionism is backed by an emotion. If you're being perfect, what's the emotion that drives perfectionism? Sorry? Anxiety. So, generally speaking, in fact, anxiety also controls the controlling pattern as well. So, here's the dilemma. If you say to your partner, hey look, I'm sorry, I can't vacuum the floors twice a day. Don't quite have the time, and since you don't like vacuuming, it's a dilemma. I'm sorry, I'm not going to vacuum them. And so what happens is the perfectionist person might get really bothered by that. So what happens when your way of being is a certain way too far, it becomes a problem. And usually when it is too far, it's driven by anxiety. The reason, generally speaking, less anxious people are more flexible. More anxious people just want it done a certain way. And that can be around tasks. It can be around tasks, like we were talking about earlier, you know, things have got to be just level. Or it can be around the vacuuming. It can be around all sorts of things. The biggest problem I have with people is around childcare, because some partners think that the way their partner is looking after the children is quite inadequate. Children not safe, that sort of stuff. So what I want you to do is be alert to the fact that these extremes exist, and they're difficult to talk through. One of the ones that's the most difficult to talk through is substance abuse. I've talked about substance use versus no substance use. It's more of a problem when it's substance abuse. And the people who are most likely to be substance abusers are normally avoidants. Although the anxious style can have their own things which are a little less visible. Sometimes it can be drinking, but what would happen for the anxious style a lot is they've got other methods. They talk a lot. They're endless talkers. They're addicted to talking on their phones, or addicted to going on their phones and going on the internet, or something. So everybody has their own issue or their own challenges. The reason the bottom one is a particular problem is because people, when they take substances, change personalities. And when they change personalities, they are not in that personality, they are not an observer of themselves, so they frequently underestimate the way in which they change. And that's really difficult for the person pushing for change, because the other person doesn't think there's a problem. Other questions about that, or are there any thoughts you've got about that? Because these are important issues that come up all the time, and they make listening very difficult.
Yeah, how, like, if there's the perfectionist person in the house that just needs the house to be totally clean all the time, and the other person is a bit loose, leaves his socks lying around and stuff. You know, and then how do you broach that when, you know, if you're totally getting nagged all the time?
Well, because
this stuff up.
and the perfectionist person is arguing
Yeah.
that the place will fall apart if I don't do this.
Really
If socks are left around, it's gonna, what's the place going to look like? What happens when Aunt Joan comes over? What's she going to say?
Yes.
That's right. In other words, it can feel big to them.
Yeah, and it's like such a thing.
Yes.
That it's hard to actually get into.
Yes. I tell you a story I tell. You can keep yours for a second. Here's a story I tell, and it's a really useful story. I used to be in the school system. I was a school teacher for a number of years, and then I became a school counsellor. And of course, I mostly dealt with the naughty kids as a school counsellor, or the kids who came from difficult backgrounds. And what was really interesting about the way schools operate is if you think of everything on a continuum, so we've got the perfection end and we've got the imperfection end. And the truth is, people are highly perfectionist or highly imperfectionist are both dysfunctional. Both of those extremes are don't work. And I saw this in the system. It was really, really clear. The teachers were at the perfectionist end. Have your homework done on time, study hard, blah, 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 achieve, and so on. So the teachers were up the perfectionist end. And I was dealing with the kids who were down the other end. I had kids who would say, after they'd been expelled from a class, they would say, well, I don't care. I don't care whether I go to that class or not. And then you'd say, well, actually, if you don't care, what will happen is your parents will be called in to actually talk about this. I don't care if my parents are called in. And they would say, well, you'd have to come and you'd have to face the board. They'd say, I won't be facing the boards. My parent might. And I don't care what the board says anyway. And I said, and they would say, well, I would say to them, well, you could be turned out of school. And they said, I don't care, that's good. Spend more time on the balls. You know, they had an answer to everything. Down the imperfect end was where they loved to be. And they didn't care about people up here. These people were tryhards, right? I'm not going to be one of them. I'm fine down here. So what happened was we had an impasse between the people at each end. But what I noticed over the years was a lot of these kids down the bottom end did okay. They did okay in life because they did it their way. They didn't get much of an education. And so, but many of them, I remember one guy who I still see occasionally, Lucy and I know, he was ADHD and he was dyslexic and he hated school. And he's now got far more money in his 40s than I had in my 70s. Right? In other words, just what's functional is very debatable. Very debatable. The crucial thing, everyone's got a story that justifies their position on the perfect and imperfect line. Now I want you to consider this because I want you to think of the possibility that there's really no right way to be. So when you're discussing this with your partners, you really need to be careful about how you negotiate, because we tend to think the way we do things is really best, just on the side. We're best really, and they're not quite so good. Right? That's what we tend to do. But the truth is this spectrum is a lot more negotiable than you might imagine. It's an important fact, because what happens if, say, I'll give you an example that a client came up with just last week. He was really bothered that in fact when his partner swept the floor in the kitchen, it wasn't swept well. There were bits missing. There were bits still on the floor. He was really bothered about that. And it was a frequent topic of conversation that he's brought up a number of times he's come. But it was one of several where she just wasn't doing things quite right. And so he got really, and he could justify his position endlessly. We got little children. We got a daughter. She's only 1 or 2 or something. And she could be on the floor. And then she could pick up bugs. Because there's stuff on the floor. Can you see? Everyone can justify their position. Now this is important to consider. Because how do you get on when you've just got those different positions? And it's an even more important one around substance abuse, because there's consequences. And so, in general, actually, do you want to give any examples, or do you want to ask questions before I look at ways forward of how you deal with this? Any other examples, thoughts, questions? No? Okay. How would you suggest you deal with those extremes? What would your advice be to the couple where she doesn't sweep the floor well enough and he sweeps it perfectly? What would you say?
Get a Dyson. Cordless vacuum cleaner hanging on the wall. It's all done perfectly.
Can you imagine them choosing the vacuum cleaner they were both happy with? Difficult. Yes, sometimes you can actually come up with a solution that's functional, but unfortunately, frequently, no, you cannot.
Did you talk to him about, did you suggest if that is an area that he feels passionate about, that he talk to her and he say, hey, look, I'll do it?
Yeah, why doesn't he
You
just
know,
do that?
that way, it does get done to his expectations.
Yes, so that would be reason, right? That would be doing some reasoning. Needless to say, he had a background where Dad was, in her words, pedantic. So he's been trained. He will actually he will talk about if a cord's left like this, he will go chapter and verse about how unsafe that is, what could happen to their child, the hospital costs for actually having to be admitted to hospital for a broken leg. Like, it's endless. So he grew up in this environment. And of course, all of us get into these difficulties really because of our background. We hardly ever start these problems in couples. They've usually all got a background. So what we're doing is we're saying, how do we change someone with a background and they believe their background and the way they do things is best and functional? And you see, you really can't use reason because they've got that cornered. They've got the reason market cornered. I can tell you Dyson's wouldn't go down well.
So how do you
Very happy to
deal with
tell
it?
them that.
How do you deal with it?
I just say, look, honey, you're a bit way out on a limb here, you know, over the top.
Isn't that why you fell in love with the person in the first place? Perfectionism?
Very often, that's true. Or some other idiosyncratic pattern. That's quite right. We fall in love with things that eventually drive us up the wall. That's true. It happens a lot. That's true. Okay. It happens a lot. When you've got people like this, you've got to really, this is the way I do it. I get people to see that there's really no right and wrong. But if this boxes the ends of something, then you've got to realize this is an implacable problem. Because you see, if I try to get her to tidy up more, to clean the floor better, then I'm trying to get her to be not herself. Can you see that's a problem? In other words, in fact, as it so happened, she struggles to actually even see that the floor isn't well done. So she simply doesn't have the observation skills to even see it. But even if she did, then what she'd have to do is she would have to change who she is to be a clone of him. And as soon as you're being a clone of your partner in any way, shape or form, you're probably heading towards a resenting package. But however, you could also ask, well, what's going to happen if in fact she doesn't step up and he has to change a pattern that he believes is absolutely crucial? What I do with couples like this is I spend a long time talking about what I'm just saying to you. Because at the end of the day, they have to make their own decisions. And there's no right decision. There is no right decision. There is simply a negotiation. So what I have to do in my room is do what you just did with each other endlessly. Lot of negotiation, frequently we go away, finish the session, negotiation hasn't reached the end. But what I notice is that if people do this enough, and they get to hear that extremes do happen, and generally speaking, extremes don't tell us who's most functional or who's least functional, they're just patterns. What happens is, talk to her about enough, things start to shift.
I'd say what would have to happen is that the person concerned would have to really see what's driving their behaviour to begin with.
And own it.
And own it.
So he's got this pattern from home. He now recognises it. But you see, when he came to me, he understood, yes, Dad's like this, but he thought that Dad and he were two of the very few functional people on the planet. So this is a difficulty, right? Yes, Dad and I like this, but actually everyone else needs to get sorted. So it takes time to get to see a pattern and own it. And one of the most difficult is drinking, over drinking. Largely because it's really distressing when a person who's not the non-drinker finishes up having to deal with a changed personality who often is not managing themselves, is not owning, doesn't remember the way they were, and doesn't believe the way they were told they were when they're drunk and so on. And the difficulty is, if a person stops drinking, they say, well look, I'm only drinking this many now, and they think that's functional. But for the partner, there's two things going on. First of all, the old fears about I always got worried if you were drinking at all. And secondly, now the shift is less, but it's still there, and can I cope with the shift in behaviour even though it's less? Generally speaking, what I do is I give them, the drinkers, I give them an idea of what would be acceptable. Now, I've got to be very careful here because I don't want to control anyone. I don't want to say Jeff is right and you're wrong. So I've got to be very, very careful about this. So what I'll say is, how many drinks could you have without any change to behaviour that would worry your partner? And normally the partner will say 3 beers, something like that, I'll say. And so normally we use that as a yardstick. So it's still negotiation, but it's a different way around. And if in fact that isn't mentioned, if the 3 beers is mentioned, I will say, well, normally 3 beers in an evening would be enough for your partner to cope with. So then I'll talk about maybe low alcohol beers and things like this. But the thing is, it's very, very difficult to get people to see what they don't see as a problem because it's normal for them. They've always done it. They've been raised with it. In fact, the guy who was a perfectionist, he believed his father was one of the most functional people he knew. But his wife knew that actually his father drove people up the wall. So you can see, again, there's a perspective shift. There's this perspective difference. So you can see this negotiation process frequently takes time. And so, for example, if a person says, okay, I'll cut down to, say, 6 beers a night, and you try 6 beers a night, and then they've got to be open to, well, how was that? After 6 beers, was I still okay, or what was? But the difficulty is they've then got to buy into where their partner is at in order to maybe monitor that, maybe bring it down from 6. Can you see it's a constant process of really valuing the person you're with and trying to get a balance that you can both cope with?
Because also the person that's drinking may well feel controlled by their partner's anxiety.
Correct. And to some degree that's true. To some degree that person is saying, I can't cope with 6 beers because it's too much for me. Another way of saying, actually, the way you behave after 6 beers really gets me anxious because you can speak loudly and you can be abusive, whatever, right? So the truth is that anxiety is often well-founded. It's based on experience.
The other thing is also that the person that's drinking needs to look at why they need to drink so much anyway, because they're often looking to perhaps numb down their feelings so they can relax, so they don't have to think, so they don't have to feel. So looking at other ways where they can actually find that same experience, but not necessarily through alcohol.
So let's look at what Lucy's saying and expand it a bit. Generally speaking, the people who drink the most and drink most abusively, now that it's excessively, are avoiders. It's in the book, it's a standard part of avoidant behaviour. So what would, as Lucy said, avoidants who grow up not feeling have to deal with the feelings that they're not feeling somehow. And so they will use things to actually address the feelings that they're not feeling. And it could be that they weren't listened to. It could have been that they just learned to be loners. It's not necessarily that the past is bad. What they learn to do is use something to distract them from their feelings. So for example, because most avoidants are men, this is usually a male problem. But it's actually a male problem across the board. For example, if the people are having affairs, it's most likely men who are cheating on their wives to have an affair. So we're talking about a group of people who don't feel. But you see, women, who are mostly the anxious and secure style, they can feel too much. They can be over-feeling. And so what they can do is they can put that energy into being really good mother, a really tidy house, everything really sorted. So they can just put their anxiety or their discomfort into a different area. Even though they're feeling a lot, they're trying to get that off their chest. They can often talk to lots of friends or whatever. Everyone has feelings that in some way, in general in our culture, are not well managed. And so this is the sort of thing that comes from them. It's very hard to tell that to couples, because if I say to a person, well, actually, you're doing this because you're not feeling, that's really, really difficult. So that's like saying, there's a problem you've got, and you don't see it, you don't know it, but it's there and you need to deal with it. That's very difficult. So the truth is, that's why knowing our feelings is very important, because once you start to get to know one or two, you start to see actually there's a few others in there as well. It's just a slow process of uncovering those feelings. So generally speaking, these extremes are caused by unmanaged emotion of one sort or another. This is difficult, isn't it? This is where the rubber meets the road in terms of relationship stuff. Any questions? Yeah.
So with substance abuse, like for example alcohol, you were referring to the gentleman with the cleaning and how that related to how he grew up. Do you find that that's the same with substance abuse? Because generally speaking, you don't start drinking until you're later on, in your late teens.
There are 2 or 3 factors in our culture that cause that. Young guys in our culture drink in their teens, late teens, so it's a cultural norm. But the background frequently is in our culture that boys aren't in touch with feelings as much, so they can't process. So what happens, even if they get to, say, drinking at 17 or 18 or 19, what soon happens is the drink is the way to deal with anxiety. Like they're overworked, stressed at work, doing too many hours of work, can't pay the bills. So what will happen is, if in fact you're not working with your emotions, you will tend to use these other ways to sort of sublimate those emotions. Does that make sense?
Have a break.
Yeah.
Different.
Okay, probably enough for today. That's a lot. The message from today is this: take time to listen to each other. Don't rush conclusions. Try to agree at a time you'll come back and discuss it again, so you know that the difficult things are going to be addressed. Chapters 28 and 29 onwards, that's the beginning of part 4. You're now ready to start the chapters that get you out of old patterns, and they start chapter 28 and part 4. I want you to take this slowly. You'll find that actually a lot in your relationships will change quite quickly with just a few things being different. If you manage to master this listening thing, then you've really nailed it. And can I say this? children raised in families where this is being done well are massively advantaged. Children really do learn how to relate from people around them. And if in fact they've got parents who really take the time to listen, or even model listening with them, okay sweetie, I'll listen to you for a couple of minutes, then you listen to me, okay? The kids will buy into that. So they learn to do this very, very early on. That is a gift that very few children will get. And in many ways it will keep them out of the disastrous relationships most of us live. Relationships are difficult because we don't have the skills and the insight. So you're now changing. So the chapters, you can read any part of part 4. And the other piece that I'd like you to read, if you want to get more aware of your emotional pattern, chapters 24 and 5, I think, cover that. So that will help you get to see. They talk about patterns for avoidance, emotional patterns for interest, and so on. So you can read that. Okay? All right.